And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
All right, thanks for joining us for this Tuesday's Flying Weather segment or aviation segment. Up first, the Flying Weather graphic for Wednesday morning. IFR here out over the central Bering Sea up into the Seward Peninsula. And a fair amount of IFR here across the northern interior, but mostly south of the Brooks Range. North of there, mostly VFR. Some marginal VFR for the western Arctic coast. IFR here along the central and western Alaska range, and a little bit of IFR for the North Gulf Coast areas. Kind of a mixed pattern here of VFR with some IFR thrown in, otherwise mostly marginal VFR for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, right on up into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and just areas of marginal VFR in the Gulf of Alaska for Wednesday morning. IFR over the eastern southeast coast. And then as that strong front pushes into the Gulf of Alaska, a zone of IFR looks like it's going to stay well south of the coast, although increasing east and southeast winds here will put IFR on the eastern Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound on up into the Talkeetnas, as well as along on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. A lot of VFR here in the interior all the way up to the Arctic coast, except along the Brooks Range, some lower conditions. And marginal VFR, Seward Peninsula, IFR, St. Lawrence Island, marginal VFR for the Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, and just about all of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And then for Thursday morning, marginal VFR out west with some pretty good areas of VFR here over the Aleutians, right into the Alaska Peninsula, even Kodiak Island. And over the mountainous terrain here of southern Alaska, look for IFR conditions there, all the way out to the southwest coast, and IFR over the central eastern panhandle. Good VFR in the north here, just some spotty areas of lower conditions there, just south of the Yukon Flats, maybe from the northern Nulato Hills into the Seward Peninsula. And for the afternoon, marginal VFR here, over the western interior, right on up with some IFR for the western Alaska Range and down through the Talkeetna Mountains, North Gulf Coast, all the way into the northern panhandle and then down the eastern border there, a band of IFR. Good VFR breaking out here though for Cook Inlet into the southern Susitna Valley, Montague Island down to Fognak Island. And for passes, Anatuvik, occasional IFR tomorrow, same forecast for Adigan. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR expected with the lowest conditions on eastern entrance of both passes. Rainy IFR, again, lowest conditions on the east side with windy. Occasional marginal VFR, occasionally marginal for Isabel. Going to go VFR for Mentasta. And then Tanita, occasional IFR, mostly IFR for Portage. And Chilkoot and White as well, mostly IFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet, now pushing all the way up toward Kotzebue, and at the surface there, even into the Chukchi Sea. Otherwise, 4,000 feet here for the Alaska Peninsula, 2,000 to 4,000 feet in the North Gulf Coast. And then as you head southward there, 10,000 feet across Dixon Entrance. Icing with that big storm here tracking along the Aleutians, then the front pushing out to the east. Got some considerable moderate rime icing coming up in toward the North Gulf Coast and across the Gulf of Alaska into the central and north coast of the Panhandle, with some areas of heavier icing out here over the southwest interior areas. And from there, taking a look at the 33,000 foot wind flow chart, or the jet stream here. That strong low at this elevation moving into western Bristol Bay, that keeping the jet to the south of the Aleutians there, just barely on the chart here, taking a turn to the north or northeast at about 110 knots there, but not quite reaching the southeast coast. And we'll see at 9,000 feet, stronger winds a little closer into the coastline here at 55 knots out of the southwest, south-southeast 75 knots for the North Gulf Coast. Lighter to the north and lighter to the west, especially the northern Bering Sea. But we've got northwest winds at 55 knots across the eastern Aleutians. Taking a look at 3,000 feet, low here over the southeast Bering Sea. North 40 knots across the Pribilofs, increased to 60 knots as they blow across the eastern Aleutians out of the northwest there. and generally an easterly wind here at 35 to 40 knots over the western interior south of the Brooks Range. But ahead of the frontal system, with this low tracking across Kodiak Island to about this position in the afternoon, head of the front, 65 to 75 knot winds here right up into the North Gulf Coast area, but considerably lighter as soon as you move inland. Winds on the increase along the central north coast of the Panhandle. And with that, it'll be increasing turbulence there for the southeast coast. Out along the coastline there, mostly Port Alexander up to Yakutat and into Prince William Sound, a big area of considerable moderate turbulence expected here. Actually from eastern Norton Sound, all the southwest interior, the Kuskokwim Valley, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and that extends all the way out to Atka Island, throw in the Pribilofs as well.